just checking out the painting in the background.
Oh yeah, it's from a friend of ours. Here, I'll give you an up view for a minute.
Oh wow, it's way bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah, it's quite big.
No, it's just that small painting. It's actually 6 of the entire wall.
Yeah, the whole wall.
I tend to distract people. I go into business meetings with this in my background, and they're like, "What is in your background?" I'm just like, "Don't worry about that. We don't discuss that part. We're on business."
Looks like our alternative venue looks very similar.
Typical workshop situation.
Yeah.
But in that case, welcome to Yelling at Concrete podcast, guys.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Very nice to meet you. And yeah, thanks for fitting me in, because it sounds like your life's pretty hectic right now.
It's a little wild right now, yes.
It always seems to be, though. So
yeah, this is on par.
Never calms down, just constant rolling chaos like that.
Yes, basically.
Controlled chaos.
Controlled chaos. That's what usually what my desk is. People see my desk and they consider it controlled chaos because it's just a clutter of everything. But everything is to hand, and that's the way I think of it.
Yeah.
You're going to have everything to hand. I'm terrible at introducing people, so I'm going to let you introduce yourselves.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
who you are and what you do.
My name is Jen Catron.
And I'm Paul Outlaw. And we are a collaborative artistic couple, a duo, living and working in Brooklyn, New York. We're artists first and foremost. We sculptures, paintings, but with a high concentration on performance and installation work.
Yeah, a lot of large scale interactive works. I'm a state work at Brooklyn Museum, and we show at Postmasters Gallery in New York. And yeah, we have a lot of fun with our work.
I'm going to say your back catalog is intimidating. Like having looked you guys up, because you were recommended to me essentially by Rondo, who I had, Madeline Rondo, who is in Charlottesville. Recommended that I check you out and check out kind of you what you've been up to. And then when I started diving into all of your work, I was like, oh, there's an extension. There's an extensive amount of work here for me to look at.
Yeah, we've been pretty busy.
Yeah, and we try to be as prolific as possible, but it's always each piece is a little wilder and crazier than the next. So
yeah, it feels like it.
It's fun to look back every now and then.
I mean, do you guys try and find that you kind of trying to outdo yourselves each time then? If you do get worse and more exploratory and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we have a really hard time. Like sometimes you're just part of like a group show and you need to do just like a smaller object. And we have a really hard time doing that because every time we're like, no, we have to like make something bigger and better and wilder and crazier. So we're always reminding ourselves that sometimes it's okay to kind of like, it's okay to make something that's not a massive double-decker tour bus that gives tours, like we can make like a smaller work, but
we remind ourselves of that, but then we ignore advice entirely. We tend to be extremely competitive, especially with ourselves.
Yes.
Do you, I mean, is that a thing between you? I mean, because you guys are quite unique as well in terms of the people I've interviewed before or chatted to, in that you are a duo and you work as a duo. Do you find that you try to top each other and push each other?
Yes, I actually think it's kind of the healthiest relationship that we could have come up with, because I'm extremely competitive as a person, but I kind of hate that about myself too, because I love my friends and my artistic counterparts, and we love to support them, and we do that. And the way I'm able to like maintain my competitiveness and support people is just by competing with Paul.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of perfect.
I take the brunt.
Yeah, he takes the brunt, and it makes us better as as an artistic couple. So I really think it's perfect. And now I don't have this competitive spirit with my like my artistic friends, and we just compete with each other, but we're also a couple, so it works.
And I never let Jen get the upper hand, so it continues to drive us both very, very much. But I think it's very unique that we're able to work so well together, actually, because it's not an easy thing working with and we're married, So it's also a romantic relationship, but it's not. I don't think it happens very often that people can work this closely together and not be in each other's throats all the time.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I think the amount of people I've kind of spoken to have mentioned whether they've kind of worked with someone or been in like an artist collective or something like that. And the competitive nature of it does tend to end up killing those relationships, just because it's a struggle to maintain that as artists. And I don't know whether it's driven by jealousy or just competitiveness of people wanting to be like on top.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ego involved too.
Yeah.
Especially with being like in the creative fields, or if you think you're special enough to be an artist, then you obviously have ego problems. So the ego is getting in the way. I think make a lot of creative types clash when trying to work with other people. But we tend to recognize when the other one has the better idea or the upper hand, and we go with that.
And
it makes us both better. By the way,
and I think that we kind of also been able to like shed whose idea is who, and I think that has been really important. We're having like a lot of artistic discussions. Like we tend to just like someone will say something, and instead of like focusing on that being their idea, then I feel like we feed off each other, that we build upon each other's ideas, and then the idea doesn't become one person's anymore. It's both of our ideas.
Yeah.
And that seems to solve a lot of the ego issues.
We're remarkably unselfish.
And modest about it as well. Like
very modest.
That's interesting. I mean, so we'll dig a little bit into kind of your work and what I've seen of it. Like, so how long have you guys been working together?
I guess it's been like 12 years now, actually.
Yeah, and we actually classic. We met in graduate school, in school, which was at Cranbrook Academy of Art, which is very close to Detroit in Michigan.
Right.
So Motor City. But it's we met there. We were just admirers of each other's work, I think, at first, and then we were both doing performative works in a sculpture department. So that often needs a lot of help. So we ended up helping each other quite a bit on our individual projects, and then towards the end of it, we did a couple of collaborations, and then of course began a relationship. So then moving back to New York, we just kind of started doing things together because it made the most sense economically and physically, and getting the works done, and it's just kind of grown since then. But yeah, it's been almost 12 years now, I guess.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah,
that's a while. And you're having a child now, yeah, like having moved your baby shower to for the podcast and everything.
Right. What baby finally on the way.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah. It's a little wild.
This will be a new adventure.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're not quite sure what to think about.
Yeah, I'm still like, I don't know if you can see the fear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at you both, and like the sensation of tension has just risen.
Yeah, totally. We're still like, it's like going to happen in like 2 or 3 weeks, and it's like starting to hit us. Like this is really happening very soon. So
there'll be another ego to deal with the situation.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
No.
Now Paul's to be competing against the baby too.
Right.
So
I need a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I'm very worried that this baby is going to take a lot of attention away from me. This is going to be causing problems in my future child relationship.
I mean, that's the role of a child, right? You come in and you usurp your parents as well. That's what we're always told to do. Is you come in, see what they do, and you go, I can do that slightly better, right? Like,
right, exactly.
and improve above that. That's how you build upon it.
Yeah, parents are supposed to want better for their children.
Yeah.
I think that I just want good enough.
Yeah. Just play it down a little bit, don't aim high. Like you're fine. Just be average. We're okay.
Don't try to top us. This is not.
We had a conversation a while back, a couple of friends of mine saying it's hard for artistic people to have children because they worry about the complete opposite of what kind of non-artistic people worry about. People worry about their kids becoming like performance artists and starving artists and all these kinds of things. And we said we really don't want an accountant
Right.
Like,
We're very worried about that.
like, what if they're into sports? Like,
No, we joke about that. That is what we want. We want an accountant.
Well, to take care of us.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that could be the alternate view, is that,
Make sure we're setting up our retirement account correctly. Would be very beneficial.
Good.
But then we talk about child labor, and that's a whole other subject.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting into like family band territory at that point, and
right.
gradually just exploiting your children, which is a dangerous road to go down at times, I think.
Yeah. You can't. I mean, that's why everyone has children, right? I mean, from the beginning of time, you needed help growing the vegetables, so you had more children to help you on the farm. So it's
gradual ceramic vegetables in sculptures.
In our case.
I mean, I was about to make a nice segue, but it included indoctrination of children. But I saw your work, which was to do with the cults and Heaven's Gate and all those kinds of things. I was kind of curious where that work came from, because I saw your other work as well, which was more to do with the like consumption and food and bits and bobs like that. And I was curious where that fitted in and how you guys got started with that.
Well, I think that we were just reflecting the times. I think that we were watching a lot of Americans become infatuated with these different belief systems, and cults kind of seem like a very like direct way to deal with some of those like why do people believe in what they believe, and how do you get off these tangents of belief? And we were seeing it in politics, and people becoming so passionate about these beliefs that couldn't really be proven. And then
I think it's important to say that this is all, we began this process years and years ago,
right,
before it was such a prominent aspect of society, especially right now. But it was kind of, we both came from like religious upbringings.
Okay.
So I think we kind of started exploring the idea of that kind of belief system and why that's so important to human nature, and why it's existed since the beginning of man, as far as we know, some form of belief in the supernatural or the unexplained or
politics too,
which transfers over to politics, right? But like originally, I think we were just kind of exploring this desire to believe in something that humanity has. So we started our explorations just kind of researching and making work about some different religions, which then pretty quickly delved into the cults, because they're so interesting. And obviously it's the extreme side of that scenario, right, where people give up their entire lives for what's essentially a fallacy or made up set of beliefs that in a lot of cult situations it was made up by just an individual person. Yeah. So it's really remarkable how much power that has over somebody. But then as we were making this work and as things progressed, both here and abroad, everywhere, the conspiracy theory scenarios really became super prominent. So it was really, really interesting to see how our work was coinciding with the fever pitch of total loss of any like total dive into the conspiracies is really interesting. Yeah.
And we just that general thought process, we saw a lot of ties between like these very specific religious beliefs, and then zooming out into like a wider conspiracy theory. And there's a similar thought process that happens behind it, and often it's led by some sort of charismatic leadership of sorts. And then actually we started with Heaven's Gate because I wrote them. I was like just doing some research, and I came across their website, and they said write this email to inquire for boarding passes.
Okay.
So I did that. And then apparently there was somebody who was left behind, or possibly a few people, I'm not positive. And they're very prompt in answering correspondence. So we started a correspondence, and that's how one of our pieces came about, which was a miniature reproduction of the death scene of Heaven's Gate. Because as you know, it was very it was very designerly and like artistically, like
orchestrated.
yeah,
Yeah.
with the purple fabric and the matching suits and the Nike shoes, and
they all wouldn't have dinner at Marie Callender's
right.
for their last meal. They all got the exact same pot pie.
Yeah.
Like it's very
salad,
staged and choreographed, and aesthetic decisions were made in this mass suicide. It's
I always find it curious kind of how much religions and cults and anything which kind of has that kind of level of indoctrination put thought into the creative process, like to such a scale that you kind of completely forget. It's like, oh yeah, somebody's designing outlets. Like
absolutely. I mean, it's an incredible amount of design. Like the creative aspects or the visual creative aspects of a lot of these cults and movements is plays a huge part. It plays a huge role in that. I mean, one of the more blatant, more obvious examples would be like Nazi Germany, like the visual aesthetics of the German army and the German superpower are striking. I mean, it's pretty incredible graphic design and uniform design and architecture and the propaganda machine was just nonstop output of these images and this. Which is really shows the power of what the design and artistic endeavors can do, even if it's for the worse.
Right.
Religion takes a lot of those cues as well, or religion creates a lot of those cues, I guess. But it's
well, a lot of the greatest artworks have come from it as well.
Right.
Renaissance works. So
it is that double-edged sword of
it really is.
But then I don't know if that I always take a little grief with graphic designers because I can't do graphic design. My brain just isn't built for it. So there's always got that slight leaning of well, graphic design's always slightly evil. Like always slightly.
I like that. I might start borrowing that. That's good.
I mean, they work for marketing and they work. And they
I mean, they are.
Right?
It's totally, absolutely.
It's a form of manipulation. For sure. And that's what graphic designers are trained in.
It is manipulation.
The art of manipulation.
I mean, all artists are manipulators, but I guess it just depends whether you think they're manipulating for the good or for the worse,
Yeah. I mean, again, that's an interesting question for you both. I mean, as performance artists, how do you see your relationship between you and your audience? I know your work, you try to get the audience involved, you do these huge scale things for people kind of to really get interested in it and get physical with it, so to speak. I mean, do you see that relationship as something where you're trying to pull people in, trying to manipulate people in, or are you interrupting their day, or how do you fit for that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it varies project to project, but we're always trying to we try to entice people into things with, I guess we do, it's big, it's impressive, things are moving, brightly colored, like when you see it, you want to be a part of it. You want to know what's going on. And I think there's always that sort of element involved in most of our work. Like we do use a little bit of, I don't know if it's called, we could say trickery, but it's just like bold.
Some sleight of hand.
Yeah, it's bold. Yeah. You want to know what's happening. And I think that, we've always, and that's just our personality too. So, I mean, we do it without thinking. And then on reflection, I realized that that's just what we do, but it is a good way to draw people in. And then once we have them in, then we're hoping that the different elements of the work, the research, the politics, or all of that starts showing itself, revealing itself to the person, the visitor, the guest. So that's often involved in our performance. And then, they're part of it too. They're now part of the performance and their reactions. And usually some people like to really interact with us and try to unpack what's happening. And then they help shape the work. And I find ourselves sometimes even some of their insights start leaking into our work too. So it's definitely.
Does it change what you do as you go along with the audience reaction?
Yes, it does.
Yes, I think it morphs a little bit. There's a certain element of unexpected reaction from the audience that we're not quite sure how they're going to react to because we often provide activities for them to do. That's how we bring them, be it going on a tour, or we're making them a sandwich that they're going to actually eat, something that they're actually participating in.
Yeah.
They can't be non-participatory in most of our work. They have
that
to
terrifies me.
Right. But the engagement is the part that we're not quite sure what's going to happen. So it does provide a lot of interest for us as well, so that we can morph and adapt in the moment. But it's all about gauging the audience, getting them involved, and letting their guard down a little bit, so that then whatever underlying message or motivation that we have in the piece can kind of sink in through the back window, and then I think it kind of resonates with people a little longer, and it makes them think about it after the fact. That was really cool. That was a fun experience. But then, what about this part really made it unique and say something to me, and we think that really sticks in people's brains for longer than just, say, viewing a painting or looking at a sculpture, which is why we enjoy performance so much.
Right. Which and kind of piggybacking on that just a little bit, a lot of the work we do is not aiming for the collector. It's just not what we do. It's just, we're more interested in shaping culture than shaping the market, which is kind of terrible for us monetarily, but bad decision.
This is why we don't want your children to be performance artists.
Yes. Yeah. Like, make paintings, that collectors could buy. But yeah, it's definitely like, but we also made the conscious decision to do this. Like, we knew that this was going to be a difficult way to go about, shaping the art world. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but we are proud that we've been able to continue to do that too.
Yeah. I always found it interesting, especially, one of the reasons I kind of wanted to speak to you both, and if I had a reason to kind of want to grab out and say, hey, you guys come talk to me, was that idea I've kind of seen within your work, in that you are very much concept based. You're not commerce based. You're not in terms of what can I make a print of this, can I merchandise this as you go along. And I've met so many artists who don't seem to have that viewpoint within their artwork, who very much approach it from, well, I've got to make money from this at the end of the day. And right. Even within my own projects, I make a small zine which I give away for free, and the amount of people I meet who go, well, why is it free? Is there a catch? Surely this is costing you money. And we're like, yes, this is costing me money, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
You're kind of completely missing that. So when I saw your stuff and where you're kind of tackling the idea of people selling their work, and then that price difference between some artists and other artists being so huge, I just thought it was fascinating, and picking up on that as you went along was just one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you.
I think it's a big part of our practice too, the idea of price points for artists, and what makes art valuable, and why is some art exorbitantly priced, and other art you can't even sell at all, and it's all artificial for the most part. The prices are artificially set by a system of galleries that we've had in place for decades and decades now.
And the prices are set. What I actually kind of feel like I'm comparing it more now, and I don't know how familiar you are with American stock market, but like the GameStop. Right. I feel like the art market is a little similar to that sometimes, like in that there's a fever pitch for this certain artist, and then it just it skyrockets them, and then sometimes they fall very quickly too, because it was too much at one time. But it's a fascinating, markets are fascinating, the artistic market is really fascinating, but it is kind of this constructed, made up being that the uber rich controls, and the whole thing is just
because the ones driving those prices up are probably the same people that are controlling the markets.
Right.
It's just a different form of investment, and a different opportunity to make money. which definitely undervalues some of the conceptual importance behind this artwork, or people, not anyone's artwork, but some of it is valuable for good reason.
Yeah.
Right, obviously, yes.
But some of it seems to just be artificially set price points and goals in order to get in, make some money, and get out, which takes money away from other artists who are doing important work. Is ultimately the sacrifice that's made. But I know we try to tackle some of those things by we've actively decided that our artwork is for the most part unsellable. but that's okay with it. Like, that's the decision that we've made. But it is somewhat of a commentary on doing this experiences for people to enjoy an experience for free. So it's something that's kind of for the people in a lot of ways. But we found a lot of critical success in that way.
Yeah.
But it's also because we haven't tied ourselves so closely to the monetary art market, that it has actually given us a lot of freedom in what we make and how we can diversify the objects and the installations that we create can be very different from each other, because we don't have to necessarily stick with a certain art brand that we've had to make for ourselves. So there's actually a lot of freedom in this idea of free performance or free activations for audiences.
Yeah. I think there's what I was just thinking there, we kind of mentioning stock markets as well, as I'd compare it a lot to like cryptocurrency and things like that, especially within the art work now, because there's a new cryptocurrency, which is to do with images and being able to farm images and digital copies of things, and all of that fascinates me, because it's just building up again of that whole idea of it and adding value to things. But to me, it makes me almost uncomfortable with it. Like, and it makes me, I don't know how some artists deal with the idea of something they created being suddenly worth thousands, hundreds and thousands of pounds.
Totally.
It's just,
it's very conceited of them. It's shocking.
But also dealing with that, I mean, it can have huge ramifications on the artist. Which I think is kind of what you're saying. Like, how does the artist deal with that instant monetary success?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them fail. Is kind of how the end of the story is pretty often. But it's an interesting problem to have. We'll never know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Just what you were saying, it's like we've made our creations unsellable. I just like the idea of you kind of going into a bank and them asking you, it's like, well, what do you do? It's like, oh, well, we make things that you can't sell. I'm not sure. They're saying words, but I'm not quite sure what they mean. You can't sell this.
Our gallerists love it when we say this kind of stuff. Like, how much is this sculpture? I'm sorry, that's not for sale. We're actually inflating our own worth.
There was
not selling.
There was a show where Paul was actually really proposing to me that we just say everything is not for sale, and I'm like, I feel like that's like taking things a little too far for everybody. Let's just let it not be sellable versus saying it's not for sale. I don't know.
See, no, I like that idea, because there was ages ago I wanted to do an exhibition of anonymous art where you couldn't buy any of that art.
Yeah.
And the prices would be there, but any inquiry would be met with a no. This is, and you don't meet this certain criteria, and whatever they approach you for, you just look at them and go, no, you're this. I'm sorry, you can't have this. Your teeth are slightly too long today, and just like really pick.
Yeah.
It's an interesting angle.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, it comes back again to that kind of abusive audience, which performance has, because I find it interesting when you say the idea of you try and get people in. I think a lot of people, when they think of performance art, they see most performance art as trying to push audiences away. It's intentionally abstract, intentionally out there, because they're like, no, this is art. This needs to be as far removed from everything as possible.
Right.
Whereas with your work, you use a lot of, easily recognizable imagery and things which the general public can connect to, and they have instant memories of, or those kinds of things. Do you find that especially when you saying you push yourself constantly, do you find there's like an edge of where you've gone too far at times and just like audience are not going to connect with this?
It's a definite balancing act.
Yeah, definitely.
That we it's it's a line that we walk actively, and we do realize both sides of the line have detrimental consequences. So that's kind of part of the fun we have in making this art, and part of the creative process. But it's we do want our work to be very inviting and very acceptable to the mass audience, but not go too far in that direction where it cheapens.
Right.
It's
very important to not. Yeah. Right. And it's
because it's still edgy. It still has motivations that aren't commercially. It's not like buying sneakers, we still have to be a little edgy, but still inviting to the public, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's usually some subversive elements of it and some weird elements, and sometimes we go a little too far on those elements too, where people will leave a piece and be like, I have no idea what that was about, and then that was probably too far, because you want people to at least walk away with some sort of idea of what you're trying to do. But so there's definite, we've gone too far before too, but even when we have gone too far with our conceptual thought process, I still feel like there's usually something about it that people are like, maybe they didn't get it, but they really enjoyed being a part of it too. So I think that's
there's a lot of a wink and a nod with the work that we do.
Yeah,
it's very engaging and inviting to as many people as possible, and some people just won't get it, but they'll still enjoy the experience. Whereas other people enjoy the experience, but then they're also like, I see what you're doing, and I know what you guys are really saying here, and that's kind of when we wink at them, and they get the joy of unlocking that extra level of understanding. But people who aren't thinking that way also just enjoy their experience, which we also think is important. We do want to find a common denominator, because art doesn't have to be restrictive and totally over everyone's head.
But we also don't want it to
go in a false manner.
We also don't want to go too Banksy either, so we want to be careful in how we phrase this. We do want to invite people in, but we don't want it to be too obvious or too it's just finding that right balance, really.
I think it's
fine line to walk.
Yeah,
it is. I think it's very much. It's one of the things which I think I've discussed with many a person on this podcast, is actually just the idea you can talk yourself out of ideas because you think something is too obvious, and then you forget that the general public don't necessarily think like you.
Right.
Not making that connection. And like you're saying, with people kind of coming to a show and then not getting it, and you're like, yeah, but it's so obvious. It's like right there, and I've put it on a it's like, how are you not getting this? And like, oh yeah, because they didn't make the 12 connections I took to get there.
We haven't been researching this for the past year, and it's I think that's kind of the hardest part about being an artist, is that you are in charge to some degree on how an audience reacts to your work. And it's a lot of responsibility to figure out where to find that balance,
because you want to leave the breadcrumbs, but you don't want to direct them to the gingerbread house,
right?
You can't walk them to the wall and be like, this is what you gotta do. You're just gonna say, no, there's a lake somewhere over there.
Right. Just dig a little bit.
Yeah. Be the tour guide. I mean, you guys were tour guides. You had a bus. I'm fascinated by the bus, just because it's such a big project to me. Like to make over. Was it a bus?
Yeah. So it was kind of a homemade double-decker tour bus. That we built and installed the seats on the roof, and
we built it too, which is wild.
Right, which is also another. Most everything we make is also has the homemade aesthetic to it.
Paul's is very, very good at that stuff. It's shocking to me.
But that's part of the ridiculousness. So the idea kind of spawned out of what Chelsea is, Chelsea, New York, where all the art galleries were at the time, all the big blue chip huge commercial galleries, and still are, I guess. But it was it becomes such a circus of wealth and power and money, and almost the Times Square of art. And we're like, well, what is this Times Square of art missing? It's the double decker tour bus, of course. So and souvenirs at the same time.
Right.
So we created Jen and Paul's One Stop Shopping, Souvenir City, and Chelsea Bus Tours, and we made the homemade double decker bus, outfitted it with all the branding and hoopla that you would expect from a tour bus.
Loudspeakers.
Loudspeakers. We
completely against the law.
We at the first floor of the bus was actually a souvenir gift shop, so you could purchase all the souvenirs of all of your favorite artists whose artwork you could never afford, but you could take a little bit of it home through our souvenirs. So we had hundreds of souvenirs representing hundreds of different artists.
All blue chip.
All blue chip,
Yeah.
super famous artists.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhat making fun of their work.
Oh, I'm definitely making fun of their work. Absolutely.
Little
definitely questioning the whole art market.
Yeah.
So like, you could buy a replica of like a Damien Hirst shark, right? So but instead of a shark, we had a little goldfish that was wearing a shark mask and a little thing of formaldehyde.
Mm-hmm.
Or a DIY Richard Serra, which was just like a tiny little box that had scrap metal, and then a how to make your own Richard Serra, and it had like leaning up against a wall.
That was called Dick in a Box.
Yeah, Dick in a Box.
Fun play on his name. We had a lot of Matthew Barney, do it yourself.
Well, because River Fundament had just come out.
Right, you could go leaf your own penis, just like Matthew Barney. Martin DeSuvero sculptures in a bag, which was just a bunch of red sticks and a rubber band.
And a how to.
Yeah, and how to.
So really playing upon like really investigating like how these blue chip markets, how they operate, what artists they sell, which are mostly white male, how they, the whole profit system. So, we showed up in this garish bus that Paul and I were. Yeah,
we just parked it right in the middle of Chelsea and then put a sign outside that said free bus tours. And people would come in the bus. And once we get, 6 or 8 people, I think it would fit 8 people on top. We'd get 8 people, so they'd climb up the staircase to the top of the bus, sit in the chairs, and then we would proceed to give a tour of Chelsea by snaking through the neighborhood, driving the bus, and stopping outside of all the major galleries.
We didn't go in.
Yeah, we didn't actually take people inside the galleries.
We just described what was in it.
We just stopped the bus outside the gallery and described the show that was going in, sometimes accurately. We also told them a lot of rumors and stories.
We promised guest appearances by Larry Gagosian.
Right, we did have special celebrity guest appearances that were just walking down the sidewalk. Anybody that we would recognize. Some people or just look like a celebrity. But it was very, very, very fun, raucous, loudspeakers, us giving the tours. But then also, buy a souvenir on your way out. So when we said our artwork wasn't sellable, we were
forgetting about the souvenirs.
We were just kidding. We sold them all at $20 and $25 a piece. Remarkable.
Every little counts, right?
Yeah, right.
Hugely successful souvenir business. So,
I mean, if you ever get out of art, you've always got to fall back then, right?
Right.
You can always open a gift shop just wherever you want to go.
Right.
But that, the tour bus was a lot of fun, but also very successful, and that was another example, or just an example of where we get people to come in to do an activity of what it is that they of something that they can accept in their mind, they have an understanding of, which is a tour. Mm-hmm. But then the entire time is the commentary of the art market and the art world and the misrepresentation of society and all the evils and standard tropes of that. So it was a good piece.
Yeah, it was a great piece.
It's interesting that you kind of mentioned there the fact that you kind of obviously didn't get permission to do any of this. You just did it. You strapped an illegal loudspeaker to the top of a bus and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Ironically, I don't know how much you guys know about kind of UK politics and stuff like that. They just they're basically debating a law right now, which essentially polices protests and puts a noise limit on protests. And there's a new tagline in it, which is along the lines of, if you cause anyone annoyance, you can be arrested.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like
is she in that protest?
if your protest causes annoyance, taken away.
Points and be heard. Wow, that tagline is something else.
Yeah. It's one of these things which has kind of been pushed in and everyone's like kind of paying attention to, but for performance art, I find that fascinating because there's got to be, there's levels of law you can break without really annoying anyone.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
You guys take a risk. I like that. I think one of the main things I wanted to ask you guys is I mean, as an artist myself, I put as much distance between me and an audience as possible. Whereas you guys push yourself into the audience essentially. And I'm kind of curious why. Like
we kind of started doing it without really.
Well, what does it mean to push the audience as far away as possible? What is that?
Well, so I mean, when I create work, I think of it very much along the lines of, to me, creating work is quite a vulnerable act. So you make the work you create, whether it's illustration, painting, or whatever I'm doing. So then I put it on a wall or whatever, and then the audience can go view it. But I don't really want to have that engagement. I want them to experience it as themselves. I don't want to have to interfere with that or any idea. So the idea of putting myself on stage is, miles away from terrifying, like 50 miles over the line. So I'm kind of not looking for reason to do it, but looking at you guys going, you actively explore that participation with your audience. You make work which requires you to be on stage. Is this something you kind of chased, or is this just something which you naturally need when you create art? Or I don't know.
I think you just nailed it.
Yeah, I think you did the latter, definitely.
Something we need as a personality trait or fault.
Right, it could be a fault. Yes.
But I think what we're exploring here is the broad spectrum of artists, right?
Yeah.
Like and the motivations and the personality types and the different people involved are hugely different. Different types of ego. That's an important point too. But it's
we happen to land on the extroverted side of the ego, so we don't try to hide our ego. We're like, here's our ego.
And some people are pure. I'd say this knowing what it means for us are like a pure artist, right? Like they make art purely for the work because they have to get it out of their soul and onto the canvas, and that's their reasoning for doing it, and that's what makes them feel fulfilled. They don't even care if anybody sees it,
right? And we should be more like that.
The total opposite of that, and like part of our reason for art, and I don't think we're alone in this, is the recognition, is the knowing that you're contributing to society, that you're making a difference, that people are listening to you, and that your voice is being heard, and that's, I think a lot of that is at least my motivation, and the artwork and the performance art is how that motivation has come into fruition. But it's I mean, like, and obviously there's different artists throughout history, but like Salvador Dali was his artwork, was his persona, was his some people would say his paintings suck. Like it was how he marketed himself and how he made an impact on the world, that everyone knows who Salvador Dali is. And we can argue his importance as an artist, but that's just the one far-reaching example of his life as an artwork.
And I think it's all a matter of how you phrase it too. Like, we could say that that we are purists in our own way, trying to make a cultural difference. But then I think that it's also important to recognize that there's ego involved too. Every artist has a different type of ego, and ours, I think, comes out in a very, I think that we just naturally like to be seen with our work. I don't think it's something that we've tried specifically to do. I think it's just what we naturally do. Like, even when we have a show where we're not performing, like, we still are there, and like, I feel like kind of a presence there, and part of the work, part of the persona of the work.
And we did talk about this slightly earlier, we touched on it briefly, but that even the idea that you think that you are good enough to be an artist is a certain amount of ego involved.
Yeah.
Like there's a certain amount of ego involved in you being like, what I am doing is worth doing and worth putting out there and worth going beyond my job or 9 to 5 or quote unquote normal lifestyle. Is a certain amount of ego involved. And I think that from that point, there's a big scale of how much that it's incorporated in people's artwork. But there's left, right, and in the middle. It's really a broad spectrum.
Definitely, I think there's definitely the scales to what someone will do and what someone will put out there. And like we briefly mentioned kind of Banksy with the whole idea of graffiti art of you want to be invisible, you completely want to remove yourself from that situation, and then like you say,
at the same time you want to be the most visible.
Yeah, because you want everyone to see it.
Point of graffiti, right?
Right.
You want people to buy your books and T-towels, right?
Right.
Everyone to see your tag,
right?
Yeah.
So you risk your life to do it.
Tagging I find fascinating, completely fascinating, just because what always gets me is like one that is that ego push of I'm going to put my name on something, but also the ingenuity people have to get their names in places just absolutely fascinates me. It brings me to kind of that whole idea of the work you see, the work you guys put in behind the final pieces, and getting a work to stage or a work to gallery must take such a long time. And I think a lot of artists stumble at that blockage of like battling with their ego, like halfway through, of like, why would anyone want to look at this?
Right.
Why am I balancing this? And yet as artists, we sit there and go, no, actually, no, it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. I'm still going to continue to put this out.
Right.
That definitely happens through the process. I mean, it's because there's always self-doubt involved. There's always, this is a horrible idea. I can't believe we're doing this. Everyone's going to do this. but then I think that we tackle that problem by laughing at that idea. And of course, everyone's going to love this. And why would anybody not like this? This is definitely worth doing.
That's why a duo is good too, because once you decide to do something, like your different moments of like when you start having self-doubt, maybe that other person isn't experiencing at that time. So you just kind of like, well, we decided to do this, so we're just going to trek along and keep on doing it, throughout the self-doubt.
And so there's a not a small amount of lying to yourself about the importance of this and how cool everyone thinks you're going to be after this is completed. But it's also, I think I've learned that from hip hop, whereas you just talk about how rich and important you are and successful you are and how much everyone loves you until that actually becomes a reality. Then you are rich and successful and everyone does love you. It's not a foolproof plan, but
waiting on some of that. To happen.
It's what keeps me motivated.
I think that's interesting that we kind of saying that there's a level of kind of self-delusion and going, yeah, no, people are going to love this and really like hyping yourself up. I think I fall into the category the other way around of like, no, I think people are going to hate this. People are really going to be against this. That's probably a good thing. We're on the right track. But I think as well, like with you being a duo, you've obviously got that conflict of things which you may disagree with one way or another. But it's interesting because the styles you have blend so well. You're both very bright, colorful, bold shapes and structures and everything which you kind of put into things. But I'm curious then, is there a separation between you guys on stage and you guys performing and the people you are behind that? Is it a level of like, you were like this before, and then that just spilled into your artwork, or you just kind of like, no, we push that? Like,
yeah, I think it's kind of who we are, honestly. Like, I think there's a certain element of like, once you're performing, you definitely amp yourself up. Like that's definitely there. I feel like the minute.
It's important to note that we're both introverts. Whenever we're not performing,
the camera goes off. You just
as soon as it goes off, we're just silent.
Total depression here at home. No, I think we both do thrive on a certain amount of attention, I guess, is for lack of a better word, but also like interaction with the with people? Like
we yes. The minute we get around people, like I feel like we're very like it just brings it out of us. So
we thrive off other people's energy.
Yeah.
Very often
Yeah.
is the case. So the performative aspect of it and the interaction with the audience really takes a life of its own at times, and that energy is like you can feel it as we're doing it. Like I can feel the energy brewing between us and the audience, and it really helps to motivate us for that final product. I think is really, I mean, attention is the wrong word, but it is kind of like that attention.
Yeah, no, I think that you said it really well. Like you start feeling the energy.
Yeah.
And there's something about that like that I feel like you especially are very good at picking up on. Like the minute, it's not even just like people's faces and the way they're looking at you. There's something about a group of people together that the energy it can be electrifying. And then once you tap into that, then you respond, and then the piece becomes all there's a spark, it intensifies. And I think that is definitely what you do.
Yeah. And we do that like in our personal lives, if there is such a thing. Like this is a continuation of our art practice. Like what we do to relax and what we do to enjoy ourselves is like, hosting other people, having a lot of people around us, having dinners.
We do throw a lot of
barbecues
parties.
or like that's what we do in our spare time.
Yeah.
On top of what we do professionally. So it's a very social dynamic that both of us seem to have and enjoy, which is another reason it works. I think if one of us hated other people, this would totally flatline.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's a balance to be struck there. What you can get away with being contrasted to your partner one way or another. I mean, it is that, I think that you hit the point there, just with that whole relationship between, I mean, not just yourselves, but artwork in general, and needing, like with yourselves needing to be seen, but artwork itself needs to be seen to exist from one sense or another. There is that leeching value of it doesn't exist, and when it's hidden away, and it doesn't exist, it doesn't have any impact, therefore it's not artwork at a certain scale. But I think what you're saying as well, like with your work not being saleable, it gives it that unique value, so it never really kind of gets watered down. Either from it's never really mass produced, it's never really imitated. Do you think that you'd ever explore that level of like manufacturing or kind of reproducibility in your work? Or
I think it would just depend on the piece, and if we felt that it was like adding to the concept of the piece, I'd have to be a very self-aware, like we know that this is I don't want to say selling out, because I don't think that it necessarily would be, but just like, is this adding to the value of the concept of the work? Like,
and to be clear, we're not against money.
Yeah.
We do like to sell work, and we do sell some work. It's like we say it's unsellable, but we do sell paintings and sculptures. So it does happen. So it's not something that we're against. It's that I don't think that we want to be stuck or to get to where we're stuck in the cycle or the trap of having to produce the same work over and over and over again, just because it provides
the collectors
money.
Right. I mean, I think, and sorry, this is starting to get a little specific again, but like collectors do like to see, they like to see a work and know that it's that artist, and that they have a whole huge buy that's really similar to that. And I think that we're trying to avoid that trap because we know artists who are in that trap right now. So
always trying to chew our way out.
Right.
I think this is one of those things that becomes kind of super important, of just being an artist and like you say, trying to challenge yourself, trying to look at what's around you and reacting to that, rather than just kind of getting trapped in that cycle of doing things over and over again just because it seems to be the right way to go, and explore those things around that line, which keeps people like yourselves performing and keeps you edgy. Is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you feel about the term edgy, by the way? Is that?
It's yeah. I mean, edgy sounds. I think it sounds like what something you'd want to be, but I think people overuse it. So now edgy just feels like a little like not what the term used to mean. Overuse of edgy.
I think there's a risk of people who aim for edgy and then miss it.
Right.
As well.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. Totally.
To round this out.
The shock, the idea of shock value is a moving target, right? It all depends on what the relation is to the rest of society at the time, and potentially right now it's hard to be shocking, and it does kind of fall flat.
I guess that is a kind of a question for you guys then. I mean, just what you mentioned with shock value being based on kind of society and stuff, do you think artists have a responsibility to remain kind of on the edge of society? Or do you think you can indoctrinate yourself and be within the greater mass and still make something significant?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all about self-awareness, I feel like you can pull that off if you're just really self-aware of what you're doing and know that you are consciously doing this and can feed off of that in a conceptually interesting way.
But another way to look at that is imagining a world where artists are not on the edge, are not on the outskirts of society, and what does that look? That looks horrible to me. That looks like a horrible, totally fucked up society. Like artists, I think will always be on the outskirts and on the edge, because I don't think society can't be 90% artists. That's not feasible. It's not the way the human psyche is set up. It's not the way the species can survive. So I think artists are always going to be in the minority, and therefore pushed to the edges, no matter what the scenario is. But it's an interesting idea to think about, a scenario where artists were not on the outskirts. But I just don't know if it's possible.
I don't think it's a good idea. Because then it becomes like you're just doing your artist who's mass marketing, really. Like if everybody gets what you're doing, then it's becoming like then you're making Nike shoes.
But right. But that would be like a world where no new music is produced.
Yeah.
Or no new forms of artwork are discovered or investigated. It's
or artwork becomes bureaucracy, and then that's becomes
pretty drab outlook.
If everything's abstract, then making something really formal becomes a form of rebellion.
Right.
Which is part of the cycle that we're in, I guess. But
it gets harder.
That's why I guess that's why people die. I think that's why we. That's why. I mean, that's why we replenish the population.
That's exactly how evolution works. Yeah. So you you have to die in order for the.
If we all lived forever, this would be extremely boring life. At this
what a
point.
different world.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point to round this out on. To be honest.
We all must die.
We've all got to die one day. There's not much we can do about it. Until then, we keep making art, but not everybody. Just a few of us.
Some of us. Yeah.
It's been lovely to speak to you both. Thank you for coming along and chatting to me about your art and what you're up to. And I hope everything goes well with Baby and all those kinds of things, and the terror, which has just once again re-entered both of your eyes.
Our faces both just went blank.
And whatever the next 6 months holds.
That's right.
But yeah, no, as I say, thank you for going to chat to me. It's been
thank you
thank you for having us.
It was lovely.
And on those wonderful points, we will talk to these guys later. And I'll click stop record.